They tell you that friendship is strength, that the more people who stand beside you, the safer you become. But history whispers a far darker truth. The most dangerous people who ever lived were rarely surrounded by crowds. They understood something that ordinary minds never do. Every friend is a witness, every ally is a future negotiator, and every circle you belong to becomes another cage around your ambition. Machiavelli never promised that power would make you popular. He warned that popularity often destroys power. If you have no friends, perhaps you are not losing the game. Perhaps you've just stepped onto the real battlefield. Most people fear loneliness because silence forces them to confront the one person they spend their entire lives running from, themselves. But what if solitude isn't punishment? What if it's preparation? What if every empty room, every unanswered message, every lonely evening is quietly shaping you into someone the world won't recognize until it's too late? Because power grows differently than happiness. Happiness wants company. Power prefers isolation. Think carefully. The king sits alone on the throne. The wolf hunts alone. The eagle flies where no flock survives. Nature has always favored those who can endure solitude without begging for comfort. The crowd mistakes loneliness for weakness because the crowd cannot survive without approval. You can, and that changes everything. The first illusion society teaches is that relationships always make you stronger. But relationships are contracts. Some are spoken. Most are silent. Every friendship creates invisible expectations. Support me. Agree with me. Stay loyal to me. Become the version of yourself that makes me comfortable. Piece by piece, your personality begins adjusting itself to maintain acceptance. Without realizing it, you stop asking what you truly think. You begin asking what your circle will approve. This is how invisible prisons are built. Not with walls, with expectations. Machiavelli understood that dependence is the enemy of authority. The moment your emotional stability depends on someone else's presence, they gain influence over your decisions. They don't need to threaten you. Your fear of losing them becomes enough. This is why powerful individuals guard their emotional independence more carefully than their money. Money can be recovered. Freedom of thought rarely can. Now consider your own life. How many decisions were truly yours? How many clothes did you wear because others liked them? How many opinions did you soften because disagreement felt uncomfortable? How many dreams died quietly because your friends laughed first? Influence rarely announces itself. It disguises itself as advice, as concern, as friendship. That is why it becomes so dangerous. The average person believes betrayal begins with an enemy. History disagrees. The deepest betrayals almost always begin with trust. Julius Caesar didn't fall because strangers hated him. He fell because people close enough to embrace him were close enough to stab him. Power never fears distant enemies. Power fears intimate access. Every person allowed into your inner circle gains information. Your habits, your weaknesses, your emotional patterns, your ambitions, your fears. Information is leverage. And leverage becomes control when circumstances change. Today they celebrate your success. Tomorrow they may compete against it. Human loyalty is often stronger towards self-interest than affection. That is not cynicism. It is observation. Machiavelli never asked you to hate people. He asked you to understand them. There is a difference. Most people confuse kindness with predictability. They reveal everything. They trust quickly. They believe honesty guarantees loyalty. It doesn't. Transparency often creates vulnerability. The mysterious individual possesses something priceless. Uncertainty. People cannot manipulate what they cannot accurately predict. Notice how the quiet person commands curiosity without speaking. Silence forces everyone else to fill the empty space with assumptions. Some imagine confidence. Others imagine intelligence. Others imagine hidden influence. Mystery allows people to create legends in their own minds. Constant explanation destroys that illusion. This is why powerful individuals speak less than expected. Every unnecessary sentence gives away another piece of the map. The less others know about your internal world, the harder it becomes to control it. Friendship often demands complete openness. Power demands selective revelation. These are not always compatible. Now imagine waking tomorrow with no one to impress. No social image to maintain. No expectations to satisfy. No group identity to defend. Who would you become? Most people have never met that version of themselves. Because they have spent decades performing for invisible audiences. Loneliness removes the audience. Only then does the real character step forward. And that moment is terrifying. Because now there is nobody left to blame. Nobody left to imitate. Nobody left to distract you. Only raw potential waiting to be shaped. Most people run back to noise before they discover what they could have become. The few who remain become impossible to influence and impossible to predict. That is where real power begins. The second stage of power begins the moment you stop asking a dangerous question. Why doesn't anyone understand me? Instead, you ask a far more dangerous one. What can I learn because no one is distracting me? That single shift changes everything. Most people experience loneliness as emptiness. The powerful experience it as space. Space to think. Space to observe. Space to become. While others spend hours chasing conversations that will be forgotten by morning, you begin collecting something far more valuable. Perspective. Machiavelli understood that the person who observes quietly always knows more than the person constantly speaking. People reveal themselves without realizing it. Watch two friends argue. The calm one remembers every word. The emotional one remembers only the feeling. Power belongs to memory. Emotion belongs to reaction. This is why solitude sharpens perception. When your mind is no longer crowded with endless social drama, it begins noticing patterns hidden in plain sight. You see who always interrupts, who constantly seeks validation, who lies to protect their image, who smiles only when they need something, who disappears when your usefulness ends. Most people never notice these things because they are too busy participating. The observer always understands the game better than the player lost inside it. Imagine entering a room where everyone wants attention. Voices compete. Laughter grows louder. Stories become exaggerated. Every person is silently fighting to become the center of the moment. Then one individual says almost nothing. He simply watches. People become uncomfortable. They wonder what he is thinking. They begin explaining themselves without being asked. Silence creates psychological pressure. The human mind hates uncertainty. When someone refuses to reveal themselves, others unconsciously reveal more about themselves instead. This is why interrogation rooms are often filled with silence. Silence is not empty. Silence is a weapon. And like every weapon, it becomes dangerous only in disciplined hands. There is another truth few people are willing to accept. Friendships often preserve old versions of you. Your friends remember who you were 5 years ago. 10 years ago, they unconsciously expect you to remain that person. The moment you change, the moment your standards rise, the moment your ambition grows beyond theirs, resistance appears, not always because they hate you, sometimes because your growth reminds them of their own stagnation. Nothing makes comfortable people more uncomfortable than someone who refuses to stay the same. That is why transformation often feels lonely. You are leaving behind identities that others still expect you to wear. The caterpillar cannot negotiate with the cocoon. It simply outgrows it. Power demands the same courage. Many people mistake isolation for failure because they judge life through popularity. But popularity is often nothing more than widespread approval. Approval has never guaranteed greatness. History remembers innovators who were mocked, leaders who were rejected, thinkers who were ignored. Only later did society build statues in their honor. The crowd almost always recognizes value after it becomes undeniable. Never before. If your path suddenly becomes lonely, perhaps it is because fewer people are capable of walking it. There is a dangerous addiction hidden inside friendship. Constant feedback. Every decision receives immediate approval or criticism. Eventually, your confidence becomes outsourced. You no longer trust your own judgment until someone else confirms it. This is psychological dependence, and dependence is the opposite of authority. The powerful train themselves to make difficult decisions in complete silence. No applause, no reassurance, no consensus, only responsibility. Because when consequences arrive, friends disappear surprisingly fast. Responsibility always remains. Machiavelli observed rulers closely. One lesson appeared again and again. The leader who tries to please everyone eventually controls no one. Why? Because every promise creates another chain. Every compromise weakens another principle. Every attempt to satisfy conflicting expectations slowly destroys decisive action. The lonely decision-maker suffers criticism today. The people-pleaser suffers collapse tomorrow. Choose carefully. There is also something almost mystical about being underestimated. When people believe you are alone, they assume you are weak. When they believe you are quiet, they assume you lack confidence. When they believe nobody supports you, they stop watching carefully. That is when your greatest advantage begins. Expectation shapes perception. People rarely prepare for threats they fail to recognize. The greatest victories in history often belong to those dismissed before they acted. Never rush to correct underestimation. It is one of the cheapest disguises power can wear. But solitude has a price. Do not romanticize it. There will be nights when the silence feels unbearable. Moments when you question every decision. Hours when the temptation to return to familiar distractions becomes overwhelming. This is the test. Most people fail here, not because they lack intelligence, because they cannot tolerate their own minds. Instead of mastering themselves, they escape into endless conversations, entertainment, and temporary comfort. Anything to avoid sitting alone with uncomfortable truths. But every hour spent facing yourself builds an inner foundation that no external approval can replace. That foundation becomes confidence. Not loud confidence, not performative confidence, the quiet confidence that no longer asks permission to exist. Once you possess that, you stop chasing acceptance. And strangely, that is often when the world begins chasing you. There comes a moment in every person's life when they realize something unsettling. Not everyone deserves access to you. For years, society teaches the opposite. Be open, be available, let people in. It sounds noble, but Machiavelli would ask a different question. Who benefits when everyone knows your mind? Access is power. The more access someone has to your emotions, your routines, your fears, and your ambitions, the easier it becomes to predict your next move. Prediction is the beginning of control. The strongest fortress in history was never built from stone. It was built from uncertainty. When nobody knows exactly what you are planning, they cannot prepare against you. This is why strategic minds rarely announce their intentions. They announce their results. Look closely at successful people. The public usually sees the victory. Very few witness the years of silent preparation. While everyone else was talking about their goals, they were quietly building them. Because speaking creates the illusion of progress. Action creates progress itself. Every time you reveal a dream too early, your brain receives a small emotional reward. It feels as if you've already accomplished something. Motivation decreases. Momentum fades. The goal slowly becomes another conversation instead of a reality. Silence protects ambition. Not from others. From yourself. There is another lesson hidden inside loneliness that almost nobody notices. You stop competing. At first, this sounds impossible. Isn't life a competition? Only if you choose to make it one. Most people measure themselves against friends. Who earns more? Who looks better? Who gets married first? Who owns the nicer car? Who receives more attention? They spend their lives running races they never consciously entered. The lonely individual slowly escapes this invisible tournament. Comparison loses its grip. Growth becomes personal. Yesterday becomes the only opponent. And that is a dangerous mindset. Because the person competing only against themselves has no finish line. While others celebrate defeating someone else, you quietly become someone entirely different. This is why powerful people often appear detached. Not because they think they are superior. Because they are playing a different game altogether. Machiavelli observed something that remains painfully true today. People rarely attack weakness. They attack potential. A man with no future is ignored. A man with obvious talent becomes a target. Envy does not follow failure. It follows possibility. The moment your discipline becomes visible, someone will call you obsessed. The moment your standards rise, someone will accuse you of changing. The moment your silence becomes confidence, someone will mistake it for arrogance. Notice the pattern. Your growth forces others to evaluate themselves. Many would rather criticize your progress than confront their own excuses. This is why solitude becomes protection. Distance reduces unnecessary influence. You hear fewer opinions, fewer doubts, fewer limitations disguised as advice. The world is full of people who unknowingly project their fears onto others. I wouldn't take that risk. That's unrealistic. Nobody succeeds doing that. Listen carefully. Those statements often reveal the speaker's limits. Not yours. The lonely mind begins separating information from emotion, advice from projection, truth from opinion. This is intellectual freedom. And intellectual freedom eventually becomes personal power. There is an ancient principle that rulers understood long before psychology existed. Scarcity increases value. Gold is valuable because it is rare. Diamonds because they are limited. Attention because it is finite. Yet people give away their presence as if it costs nothing. Always available, always responding, always explaining, always trying to prove themselves. The mysterious individual does the opposite. Their attention becomes selective. Their time becomes guarded. Their words become intentional. Suddenly people begin valuing what was once taken for granted. Presence becomes powerful only after absence teaches its worth. This does not mean manipulating people. It means respecting your own energy enough to stop distributing it carelessly. The greatest leaders in history were not accessible every moment of every day. Distance created gravity. The same principle exists in human psychology. When everything is available, nothing feels valuable. There is one final illusion that loneliness destroys. The illusion that being liked is the same as being respected. These are entirely different currencies. People may like you because you agree with them, because you entertain them, because you never challenge them. Respect is earned differently. Respect appears when your principles survive pressure, when your discipline survives temptation, when your decisions remain steady even after criticism. Many people sacrifice respect to protect popularity. They smile when they want to refuse. They apologize for things they never did. They abandon convictions to avoid uncomfortable conversations. Slowly, they become strangers to themselves. Power begins the day that pattern ends. The day you no longer fear disappointing others more than disappointing yourself. And once that shift happens, people will notice something they cannot quite explain. Your words carry more weight. Your silence feels louder. Your presence changes the atmosphere of the room. Not because you demanded attention, but because you stopped needing it. And paradoxically, nothing unsettles the world more than a person who has nothing left to prove. The greatest advantage of having no friends is not that you become colder. It is that you become clearer. The noise fades. The masks fall. The endless need for validation slowly dies. For the first time, you begin hearing a voice that has always been buried beneath everyone else's opinions. Your own. That voice is uncomfortable at first. It reminds you of your failures, your wasted years, your hidden fears, the promises you made to yourself and quietly broke. Most people silence that voice with distractions. The few who listen to it transform, because every empire is built twice. First in the mind, then in reality. Machiavelli knew that the greatest kingdom a person could ever rule was not a nation. It was themselves. A man who cannot command his own emotions will eventually obey someone else's. A man who cannot sit alone with his thoughts will spend his life running toward crowds that offer temporary comfort but permanent dependence. This is why solitude is misunderstood. It is not the destination. It is the forge. Iron does not become a sword while resting in comfort. It becomes a weapon through fire, pressure, and patience. You are no different. Every lonely night is sharpening your discipline. Every rejection is stripping away illusion. Every moment of silence is teaching you to hear what others cannot. One day, people will ask where your confidence came from. They will think it appeared overnight. They will never see the years you spent rebuilding yourself when nobody was watching. They will admire the results while remaining blind to the sacrifice. And that is how true power has always worked. Quietly, without applause, without permission. But remember this, Machiavelli never suggested that isolation itself creates greatness. Isolation is only valuable if it is used with purpose. Bitterness is not power. Resentment is not wisdom. Rejecting every relationship is not strength. Real strength is choosing relationships instead of needing them. It is being capable of standing completely alone, yet remaining calm enough to welcome loyal people without becoming dependent on them. The strongest individual is not the one with the largest circle, nor the one with no circle at all. It is the one whose peace cannot be purchased, whose purpose cannot be distracted, and whose identity cannot be rewritten by anyone else's approval. So if you have no friends today, do not rush to fill the silence. Use it. Study yourself. Master your emotions. Build your skills. Strengthen your mind. Let solitude become your teacher instead of your prison. Because one day, when the world finally notices the person you have become, they will call it luck. They will call it talent. They will call it destiny. Only you will know the truth. Power was never hidden inside the crowd. It was waiting in the moments when you had nobody to rely on except yourself. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson Machiavelli leaves behind. The person who no longer fears standing alone is the person who can never truly be controlled. If this message changed the way you see loneliness, don't let it end here. Subscribe for more dark psychology, Machiavellian wisdom, and timeless strategies that reveal the hidden rules of power. Share this video with someone who is walking through solitude right now, and remind them that sometimes the path that feels the loneliest is the one leading to the greatest transformation. Until next time, stay silent, stay observant, and let your actions speak louder than your words.